Jacob is a sneaky person, to say the least. I don't think you would call him a godly person. He has recently, just before this passage, he has stolen his brother's blessing. So in that day, the oldest child got the blessing and the birthright of the parents. That meant they were the ones to oversee the family, and they got a double portion of the inheritance in order to do it. Well, Jacob was not the oldest son. Esau was. And Esau had been tricked twice. First, he was so hungry he sold his birthright for a bowl of porridge, which Jacob had brewed up specially for him. And then Jacob, unbeknownst to Esau, had dressed himself with his mother's help in some fuzzy, furry sheepskin that his mother, did I say that? That his mother provided for him, while his brother was out hunting for a meal for his father. And when he came to his father said, who was blind, his father said, "Let me touch you, just make sure." Must have been suspicious. And he felt his skin and he said, "Well, you feel like your hairy brother Esau, but you don't sound like him." And Jacob said, oh, never mind, just bless me. Well, when Esau found out, he was fit to be tied and actually threatened to kill his brother. And so his mother, again, conniving with him, arranged for him to go live with his uncle Laban. So Jacob is on the lam. And he ends up at this place where he has to stop because he's so tired. And he finds a rock to use for a sort of pillow. And whether it's because he was sleeping on a rock or the berries he had eaten that day while he was running, he had some dreams. And the dream was of a sort of ladder type thing, going from earth to heaven, connecting earth to heaven, providing a way for God's messengers to come to Jacob. You have to wonder, here he is, scared for his life, wondering what's going to happen next, and he has a dream about God coming to earth. Now, if we just stop there, he may have wondered, is God angry with him too? Is God going to reprimand him? Is God going to take his life for what he's done? Is there going to be punishment involved? But no. In a very unexpected moment, while Jacob is realizing his wickedness, his sneakiness, his position of having to run because he's betrayed his brother, God comes to him and renews the covenant between God and God's people. I just think that's amazing. In the midst of the trials and tribulations of life, if we stop for a minute, God renews God's covenant with us. It never goes away. Never goes away. It's always available. So I want to share with you 3 stories from General Synod where I heard about or felt God's unexpected presence. The first one was Connie Schultz was speaking. Connie is the wife of Ohio Congressman Sherrod Brown, and she writes a book entitled "And His Lovely Wife." She is a powerhouse in her own right. She has thousands of followers on her Twitter account, I discovered and on her Facebook account, I discovered as I tried to sign up. I couldn't, she's full. You can't even follow her anymore. She's just amazing. She's funny, she's provocative, she talked about how compassion, the definition of compassion for her is raising, heightening awareness. Opening up the world so that people can see. Going into places and lifting awareness. And she tells this wonderful story. She also said that, according to John Lewis, the other congressman from Ohio who was beaten in the Selma March, she said, John Lewis says you also got to make a little unnecessary trouble. So she combined those two ideas in her story about the tip jar. So she and her husband were at an event. It was a long event with dinner and speakers and on it went. In the middle of the winter, and it was cold, and the people who were there, they kept seeing them first taking their coats and then preparing and feeding them their dinner and then clearing their dinner and then rearranging the room and then getting ready for speakers, and then after the speakers, bringing them their coats and cleaning it all up. And as she and her husband were on the way to the coat check to get their coat, they saw a woman who looked rather exhausted. And Connie, if you hear her speak, you'll know she's not one to ignore an opportunity to engage someone. And so this woman, exhausted, she said, "How's your night? How's it going?" Trying to be friendly, and the woman, whether out of obligation or what, said, "It's okay." And then Connie noticed the tip jar sitting on the counter. And it was pretty full. And not just with coin, but with some bills and some bank bills. And she said, "Well, looks like you did pretty well." And the woman said, "Oh no, that's not for us. Management gets that." Well, now you can imagine Connie, who's written about every injustice in the world on her blog on HuffPost, said, "Come again?" "No, we don't get that," the woman said. "Management gets the tips." And Connie, she made a funny comment, I don't remember it exactly, but something about her husband saying, "Come on, dear, let's go." Not wanting her to raise a ruckus or something. And then she said, management will be hearing about this. So the next morning she called management. And she said, "I heard that the people who are doing the work for you don't actually get the tips that they earn." And management said, "Oh, they don't really care about that." And she said, "Do you know who I am?" And he said, "Yeah, and they don't really care about you either." And she said, "I'll give you till 11 o'clock to change your policy. And if you don't, my blog will run in the HuffPost." Well, by 11 o'clock the next morning, management had changed their policy. They got so many calls. God in the tip jar. And her call to us was just to notice, just to be aware of what's going on around us. That's right in plain sight, that we often don't think matters. Some people just think, "Oh, nobody really cares about that." The second story was told by Paul Rauschenbusch, who is the senior religion editor of HuffPost. He's also an American Baptist minister, but he tells a story about, as a young man, being estranged from the church. And how if he were filling out a Gallup poll survey about his religious connection, he would be a nun. Like, I have no spirituality and no religion. You see, as a young gay man, he was ostracized from the church. Alienated, put out, called a sinner damned to hell, basically. He became an addict, and at some point was invited to a UCC church by a friend of his. And he admitted he didn't know why he went, but he did. And when he went to church that one Sunday, he discovered God in the church. An often very unlikely place to find God, especially in his past experience. So he was talking about recovering the soul of the body of Christ and called the church back to being the church, to taking risks, to being unfavorable in the world, to taking a chance with our reputation because you never know who might show up, to be the kind of people that are scoffed at like Jesus was, because we, yes, include everyone. The third story is my story at General Synod. So the way General Synod works is each delegate is assigned a resolution. There were 16 resolutions. I was assigned the resolution on divestiture from companies that profit from the occupation of Palestine. It's called the BDS resolution. It includes some boycotting, but mostly divesting and some economic sanctions. And if you've heard anything about this, you know how controversial it is. I knew it was going to be a big deal. The Presbyterians just voted to divest at their annual meeting about a month ago, and their name was all over the paper. So I thought I better do my homework. So I did a lot of reading and studying and researching, and my own, anxiety about our experience with colonial settlement. You know what this is. We want the land, but not the people. We've done this to our own First Nations. My own guilt is eating away at me as I'm studying, and I'm thinking, this is a no-brainer. Whatever pressure we need to put on Israel and the companies that profit from occupation is appropriate. But in the process of my research, I heard about a panel discussion at Chicago Theological Seminary, one of our seminaries, with some brainy people, and I thought I better listen to that. These folks are going to talk about this resolution in particular. I better see what they say. So I listened. 6 people on the panel. Only one of them, a Palestinian, spoke in favor of the resolution. There were there was an American Jew, a congresswoman. There was an Israeli Jew who's a professor in the States. And then 3 European Americans. I was befuddled. I thought, these are smart people and they're saying no? So the process is, the first day of the General Synod, all the committee members go to educational intensives. And speakers who are experts in the field come and share in an unbiased way the details about the particular resolutions. And by the way, you'll read more about the other resolutions in my Tower Topics article, which is being sent to you as we speak. I went to the educational intensive and I heard what I had thought was the truth about this circumstance. And I was really confused. I thought I knew that I had to vote in favor of the resolution, but what I had heard just didn't jive with that. So I was sitting next to this gal, and there was a break in the conversation, and I said to her name was Elena, and we had introduced ourselves before, and I said, I'm just really confused, Elena. She said, what are you confused about? And I said, I heard this panel, and they said this, and now I'm hearing that, and I'm just not sure how to think about it. And she said, I listened to the panel too. And I said, what did you think? And she said, well, I want you to know that the Jewish congresswoman who spoke on the panel against the resolution called us the next day, and I said, who's us? She's a member of the Palestine-Israel Network, a Jewish American who advocates for Palestinian rights. Her family are Israelis. She's a Jewish American. Speaking on behalf of Palestinians, she said the Congresswoman called us, the Palestinian-Israeli Network, the next day and apologized for the stance that she took. And I said, I don't understand. I don't get it. How can that be? She said, what you have to understand is there are two levels to this conversation. There's the conversation that happens in the media and among governments and with big business. And there's the conversation that happens on the ground between you and me, between real Palestinians and Israelis and Americans. And I'm an American Jew, and I'm sick of what my country has done to Palestinians, my homeland, Israel. Well, by then I was in tears. And she and I have had this fun texting back and forth. As I prepared to speak to you today, I asked for her prayers, and she assured me that she summoned up some old Hebrew that I had forgotten. She assured me that her spirit was with me as well. I should tell you that the resolution passed. Resolutions like this of witness take a 2/3 majority to pass. So 2/3 of the delegates, at least, at the General Synod voted to divest. And they voted to encourage the local settings of the church and members of the UCC to divest as well. You can see the document on the website. The companies are all named there. And there's a provision in the resolution that if the companies change their policy, that they can be reinvested in. So I encourage you to get that information and make your own decisions about that issue. God appears in unexpected places, in unexpected ways, in the most unlikely circumstances. In a minute, we're going to go to this table, and we're going to meet God in bread and cup. The most ordinary of things, that which sustains us. We don't even think about it when we partake. When we sit down for a meal, we often just inhale and then go about our way. We don't think about the God who provides our sustenance. And yet, here is God being ingested into our very cells, giving us God's strength, God's courage, as we seek to be compassionate, to heighten awareness of the people around us about where God is, to make a little unnecessary trouble so that people can see the God who is in unexpected places, being church in ways that might get us the ridicule of the world, and yet open us up to the inclusion of those who have no other safe place. And so thank you, dear people, for being on this journey with me, with the God of unexpected places.